Here's my promise to you. Scout's honor, invader's honor. If I invade your playthrough and you're chill, I won't fight you. If you do some silly gestures, if you just hang out, if you don't immediately try and murder me, I'll let you go. I'm a fair man. That's what they've always said about infomercial.invasions on youtube.gov. They say he's a fair man. He may be the fairest invader of them all. And if you just sit down in a dark little cave with him and you're chill, he won't fight you. Okay, this is the second in a series that we're doing. I'm very serious, by the way, about that. I do have a little honor system where if people just kind of give up in the fight, or if they, spin around and hop around and do goofy, silly stuff, like I won't fight them. I don't know why I started doing that. It just felt right, because in these games they have a very particular kind of co-op where you can't really talk to the people who you're co-oping with in game. You can't send messages to them really, like you can write messages on the ground, but it's originally designed to be like you're interacting with a total stranger and maybe a person who you will never see again in your whole life. Miyazaki has this interview that he did, Hidetaka Miyazaki, the director of the Dark Souls series, Bloodborne, Sekiro, Elden Ring. You know who he is. What am I saying? If you're watching these videos, you know who Hidetaka Miyazaki is. In an interview, he talked about how he got the idea for co-op and PvP in these games from when he was driving home one night and it was super snowy, and it was either he helped somebody dig their car out of the snow or he saw some strangers doing that. I think it was him who was helping this person out, and then afterwards he never saw that person again. And that idea of interacting with a person who's a total stranger, and you never see them again, it's a very interesting type of interaction. And that's what I'm looking for in Invasions. And sometimes that comes in the form of having a fun fight with somebody, and they've got a really interesting build, and they're skilled and they're challenging, and they're fighting in a way that's interesting and engaging. And other times that comes from somebody just, popping a squat on the ground, throwing down some rainbow stones, doing goofy, silly stuff with their friends. So, anyways, all of that to say, welcome back. Welcome back to some Invasions with unused or sort of forgotten weapons in the game. This time we are focusing on a curved sword. It's the Scavenger's curved sword. You can get this in Altus somewhere. I forget where I picked it up. But it's interesting for a couple of reasons. Curved swords have always been good in these games. Scimitars, falchions, any kind of curved sword have always been super, super great, going all the way back to Dark Souls 1. The scimitar, and I think you can get a falchion in that game too. Those are some of the strongest one-handed weapons that you can get. And the reason is because they're fast. Straight swords are quick, that's why a lot of invaders use them, but curved swords are also very fast and they have a different move set, so it tends to throw people off a little bit. It can be slightly easier to roll catch people if you're using a curved sword, especially the running R2s with the Scavenger's curved sword. I've found that those have the ability to catch people pretty easy, because it's almost like a spinning slash, like what you do with a great sword. Some of the great swords in this game have a running R2 that's like you kind of hoist the weapon and you spin around and smack somebody with it. But people think that the attack is going to come out faster than it does, so they roll early and then your attack animation catches them at the end. Dual curved swords have always been especially really, really strong in Elden Ring. It's a very common build that you see people running, but I don't very often see people just using single curved swords, and I especially don't often see people using this one. which is weird because it has native bleed buildup. So you don't have to change this to occult scaling or anything like that. You don't have to change it to blood scaling. It just has bleed buildup on it. And it's a weapon that you can pick up pretty early in the game. You have to make your way to Altus Plateau, but it's not that hard to get, and the requirements are not that high. And it actually has a pretty decent range. All of these weapons, I mean, when weapons have similar attack animations, really what makes a big difference is their scaling. Like their scaling can make a ton of difference. Maybe one weapon has the same animations as another, but it just scales way better with your preferred stat. But also the weapon length is really important as well. So just like how much reach does this thing have? That's why you'll see some invaders on YouTube who use the noble slender sword, because that is the longest straight sword, and you have to farm, the noble sword wielding enemies like in Limgrave, and I think they're all over the map. But it's a rare drop from one of them, and it's not like it's the best sword in the game, but it is the longest straight sword, and so that can give you an advantage in certain circumstances. And so this sword here, this curved sword, is a little bit ahead of the middle of the pack when it comes to length of curved swords. So I believe it's slightly longer than a falchion, but it's not like the longest curved sword that you can get. But I just thought it looked cool too. It has this like ivory handle with like a statue carved into it that reminded me a little bit of, if you've ever seen National Treasure, the pipe that they have. I forget what it's called, but it's like an ivory pipe that has like a ship carved into it or something like that. Anyways, the handle of this weapon just kind of reminded me of that. I just think it's a unique looking, cool weapon. And it really shines in invasions, especially if you have, this is just a quality build, it's level 90, I've got like 25 strength, 20 dex or something like that. So it's a solid choice for a quality build. I didn't change its, it is lightning infused to get a little bit more damage kind of out of that dex scaling that we have. And I just like the way that the lightning infusion sounds when you hit people with it. There's like a real satisfying crackle to it. This invasion was fun. I've been on record before in one of my like earliest videos saying that subterranean shunning grounds are it's one of my favorite parts of Elden Ring, because it feels like a throwback to sort of an older and meaner kind of game design and level design that From Software had in some of their earlier titles, like Dark Souls 1, like Demon Souls. It's not unfair, if you know what you're doing, you can make your way through it. But it's a maze. It's complicated. There's very strong enemies down there. It really loops in on itself, and it really kind of scratched that Dark Souls 1 itch for me the first time that I discovered this place. Just sort of finding out all the different doors that opened into places where I had been before, and opening up shortcuts and sort of slowly making your way down into the sewer to eventually find, the Flame of Frenzy at the bottom. Just a really fun experience. So I like invading here too, because you never know what you're going to get. It's a lot of tight corners, a lot of small tunnels, but this invasion here, I think, really sort of shows off the looping level design that we have here, because as soon as those guys turn that corner here, I have no idea where they're at, and they could be in like 4 or 5 different places. And so that sort of gives them an opportunity to get the drop on me, gives me an opportunity to fight in close quarters, which is always fun. And if, like you kind of saw earlier in the clip, if you know where some of these like dead drops are down into the lower levels, you can get away from big packs of people pretty quickly. That blue followed me down there. Big mistake on his part. But I wasn't even planning on falling down. That kind of saved my life and allowed me to win this invasion. So there you go. That's the Scavenger's Curved Sword. I like it. I think it's a great curved sword. Subscribe, like, and subscribe.